In 1979, a patent quietly killed the resharpenable hand saw. An 800-degree process fuses martensite into every tooth, harder than any file can touch. By 2010, these disposable hardpoint blades owned 70% of shelf space. 68% of carpenters who make bad cuts blame themselves, not the tool. Only 5 brands still file their own teeth. The reason no one talks about them has nothing to do with quality. In 1979, United States Patent 4,102,591 quietly set a new course for the hand saw. The patent detailed induction coils tuned to high frequency, heating saw teeth to 800 degrees Celsius in milliseconds. This process formed a razor-thin martensitic shell, less than half a millimeter deep, but so hard files became useless. It was a calculated shift. Saws that no longer needed skill, maintenance, or the craft of filing. By the early 2000s, the language in catalogs changed. Stanley, Irwin, and Craftsman introduced slogans like, "Induction-hardened teeth stay sharp up to 5 times longer," and "No sharpening required." A 2004 Stanley ad for the Sharp Tooth series promised impulse-hardened teeth for long-lasting sharpness. The fine print revealed the truth. These teeth could not be sharpened, only replaced. A 2010 audit of big box catalogs showed the result. 7 out of 10 hand saws on the shelf were now hardpoint disposable models. Names like Disston and Atkins had disappeared, replaced by plastic handles and tooth patterns that defied servicing. Marketing boasted 5 times the edge life, but engineering tests showed 3 to 4 times longer than traditional Rockwell 52 steel, not 5. Once dull, these saws went straight to the trash. The skills of jointing, setting, and filing faded from the aisle. The shift was more than technical. Maintenance terms, rake, fleam, pitch, vanished from packaging. The new promise was speed and convenience, but the cost was a craft erased. The change was mapped in patents, ad copy, and the silent retreat of resharpenable steel. Disston's story began on the banks of the Tacony River in 1840, with Henry Disston forging saws in a rented Philadelphia loft. By the 1910s, his name stood for more than steel. It meant a lifetime tool built in a factory town where 2,500 workers shaped, filed, and finished blades that would outlast their makers. The Tacony plant was more than an assembly line. It was a community with families living in houses built by the company, children attending Disston-funded schools, and generations of craftsmen passing down the skill of filing teeth to razor precision. Shop floor ledgers from the era record men who spent 40 years at the benches, their hands shaped by the same steel they worked. The company's rise was rooted in crucible steel, first poured in 1906, giving Disston blades unmatched edge retention. In 1898, the merger with Keystone Saw Works consolidated Disston's dominance, and by the First World War, the plant was shipping 2 million saws a year. Each one left the factory with teeth cut to exacting geometry, designed to be jointed, set, and filed again and again. Tacony foreman John Mulligan, whose oral history survives in the local archives, recalled the pride in knowing a Disston saw could be sharpened for decades, not discarded after a few jobs. The collapse came quietly. In 1955, Parker Brothers acquired the company, bringing plastic handles and induction-hardened teeth into the product line. The new saws looked modern but lost the soul of their predecessors. Plastic replaced applewood, and the hardened tips, impossible to file, turned maintenance into futility. By the late 1980s, the Tacony plant echoed with empty space. When the doors closed for good in 1992, the last workers left behind a legacy of tools built to endure, now reduced to collectibles and nostalgia. The human cost of this shift is written in unemployment records and in the silence of a craft no longer taught. What was lost was not just a brand, but a standard, a promise that a tool could last a lifetime if given care and skill. A living edge begins with geometry. Jointing, the act of filing the tooth line perfectly flat, demands accuracy to within 1/1000th of an inch. The Journal of Woodcraft's 2022 study measured a plus or minus 0.001 inch tolerance on vintage Disston and Atkins saws, a level of precision that modern mass production rarely approaches. Once the line is straight, the next step is setting the rake. A relaxed rake angle, typically 14 degrees, reduces the force needed to drive the saw, letting the teeth shear wood fibers instead of tearing them. Fleam, the angle that tips each tooth sideways, controls whether a saw excels at ripping along the grain or making a clean crosscut. Proper fleam, set at 8 degrees for rip and up to 15 degrees for crosscut, means faster progress and less binding. Pitch, or teeth per inch, is chosen for the task. 7 teeth per inch for coarse work, 10 or more for joinery. When these metrics are respected, the result is measurable. Controlled feed rate tests published in 2022 found that properly filed saws cut 15% faster through 2-inch pine than any disposable hardpoint. Yet today, fewer than 15% of tradespeople can name these terms. A veteran filer once said, "The saw will tell you if you listen. Most just never learn the language." Without that literacy, users blame themselves for rough cuts, never suspecting the real betrayal is a tooth line that can't be fixed, set at the factory and frozen for good. Lie-Nielsen's main workshop runs on precision. Each saw blade starts as Swedish high-carbon steel, prized for purity and edge retention. Before shaping, every blank faces a Rockwell hardness test. Each must reach a verified 52. Not by claim, but by measurement. Lie-Nielsen, lead metallurgist, inspects every blade under magnification, rejecting even the slightest flaw. Technical sheets list a cut width variance under 0.5%, a figure confirmed by outside audits. Handles, carved from curly maple, are balanced by hand. Tooth geometry is tracked for each order, with rake and fleam angles recorded and adjusted in-house. The result is a saw that remains serviceable, its edge geometry always accessible for correction. Veritas, just across the border, makes transparency a principle. Maya Thompson's team publishes every specification, from rake and fleam to the calibration of their sharpening jig. Their white paper explains the relaxed 14-degree rake, citing measured reductions in fatigue and improved finish. In-shop tests confirm joint line tolerance within 1/1000th of an inch. Customers can verify these numbers themselves, every angle open for inspection. Mike Wenzloff starts every saw with a handwritten order: pitch, rake, fleam. Even the wood species matter. There's no assembly line, just a bench, a lamp, and a 2,906 straightening jig, inherited from a retired millwright. Wenzloff files each tooth himself, adjusting by hand, and records final measurements before shipping. His saws cut a 0.03-inch kerf and have held their edge for over 40 years in field tests on blue-tempered steel. Customers return saws for a touch-up, not a replacement. Mark Harrell at Bad Axe Tool Works learned to file saws while deployed overseas, restoring battered Distons for soldiers. Today, he teaches sharpening seminars and insists on field testing every saw. Each blade is jointed, set, and filed to the same standards, surviving drop tests and months in the rain. If a saw can't be filed, it's not a tool. At Thomas Flinn Co. in Sheffield, foremen still use jigs older than the building. Since 1835, their saws are built for repair, not disposal. Aisle after aisle in the nation's biggest hardware chains, nearly 70% of shelf space is now reserved for disposable, hardpoint saws. The few remaining fileable brands are crowded to the bottom row or left out entirely. In a 2023 retail audit, less than 1% of handsaws sold in big box stores could be resharpened. Online, the story is no different. Search ranking analysis of YouTube and Google reveals that videos and articles about saw filing capture less than 3% of total viewership for hand tool content. Algorithms push power tools and replacement blades, burying the craft of jointing and filing beneath a flood of disposable convenience. A trade school instructor, interviewed for a recent survey, put it bluntly: if you want to teach saw filing, you have to bring your own tools. The stores don't stock them, and the internet won't show them. The result is structural neglect, by shelf, by search, by habit, leaving the custodians of repairable saws nearly invisible to the next generation. A disposable hardpoint saw, used and tossed every few years, leaves a heavy mark. Life cycle analysis puts the carbon footprint at nearly 12 kilograms of carbon dioxide per saw, compared to just 2 kilograms for a resharpenable model kept in service for 40 years. The numbers are stark. A hand-filed saw, maintained for decades, produces less than 1/6 of the emissions of its throwaway counterpart. Yet the environmental cost is only part of the story. In a trade survey of working carpenters, 68% admitted they blamed themselves for poor saw performance, rough cuts, binding, fatigue, never realizing that factory-set, unserviceable teeth are the real culprit. The betrayal is quiet but complete. The challenge now is direct. Demand tools that can be maintained, not replaced. Choose saws meant to last, and refuse to let the craft vanish in the name of convenience. Today, most handsaws are engineered for landfill, not legacy. Induction-hardened teeth, Rockwell 62, unfileable, have erased the expectation of maintenance. The loss isn't just steel, it's skill, agency, and trust. As brands quietly abandon repair, the real casualty is a generation condemned to blame themselves for industrial betrayal.